Well, hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever in the world you are connecting from today. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Thank you so much for being part of our Hacking HR live chat series. Since the beginning of this year, we have been inviting book authors, brilliant book authors, to share their insights, their ideas, their research, their recommendations with all of us in this community. And during this month of May, and today is May the 30th, is we've been doing most of our Hacking HR live chat series focused on mental health. And that is, well, because not only is it important and we care a lot about it, and we share a lot of content about mental health throughout the entire year, but also because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we have put a lot of energy and effort and dedication to share as many resources as possible with all of you in the HR community, but in whatever community you are part of, to learn more about mental health and how to improve the many things that we have to improve and heal when it comes to mental health. And well, I'm hoping that you have joined some of the previous sessions that we've had. If you have missed any of the previous Hacking HR live chat series that we've had in the show, in the series, please go to our website hackinghr.io. Check them out. They are all posted in there. Great conversations. So I'm hoping that you definitely go and check some of those previous conversations. And we have a great agenda for the next few months. So just stay tuned. For those of you who are connected live right now in any of our social media channels, please let us know where you are connecting from in the world. It will be awesome to know where everybody is today. And I encourage you all to be active part of this conversation. If you have any questions, if you have any comment, if there's anything that is burning you and you want to say it, please post it in the chat. I would love to read you. Of course, try to keep the conversation about the topic that we're talking about over the past few presentations, few conversations that we've had. Some people post comments that don't have anything to do with what we're talking about. They have, they are related to some other stuff. And well, those comments will not be, I will not be reading them as much as I will be reading the comments that have to do with this topic of mental health. So super excited to talk today about the 13 things mentally strong people don't do. And I am super excited to welcome to the screen Amy. Good morning, Amy. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Super excited to have this conversation. And for those of you, I will let Amy introduce herself now, but for those of you who don't know, she has this amazing TED Talk, which I, of course, listened to and watched in preparation for this conversation, The Secret of Becoming Mentally Strong, with 22 million views. That is so powerful. You are touching the hearts of 22 million people, Amy, with your story. So I would love to learn more about that too. But please, for now, if you can introduce yourself to our community, that would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, it's overwhelming to think that many people watched my TEDx talk for sure. But I'm a psychotherapist and I spent most of my career working as a therapist in rural Maine. And then a few years ago, 10 years ago, actually, now, I wrote an article called 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do that went viral and it changed my life, gave me the opportunity to become an author. So now I've written 5 books on mental strength. Book number 6 is coming out later this year. And I get to be the host of a podcast called Mentally Stronger with therapist Amy Morin. And I spend most of my time writing articles about mental strength, doing speaking engagements about how to become mentally stronger, and helping people build the mental strength they need to reach their greatest potential.
Well, that is fantastic. What a journey. And, we have been talking about starting small and growing from there. And your story definitely, showcases that, right? I mean, how you started with an article that I don't even think you were thinking back then that it was going to reach that many people, and look at all that it became. So that is a powerful story. And Amy, I know you talk in the TED Talk, you talk a little bit about your story and why you ended up writing this article and turning it into a book and a TED Talk about the things mentally strong people don't do. But can you share more about a little bit about your story and what drove you to engage in this content of mentally strong people?
Sure. So I was a therapist and I was taught to build on people's strengths. When they come into your therapy office, find out what they're doing well and tell them to keep doing those things. But at some point, I realized the difference between people who really made progress and people who stayed stuck was often not about what they did. It was more about what they didn't do. People who
Yeah.
didn't have certain bad habits tended to grow more. They tended to be able to make more progress in therapy. And no matter what they went through, they were still like hopeful and they still enjoyed life. And I thought, wow, that's really about what these people don't do.
Mm.
And I was glad that I studied those people because early on in my career, my mom passed away suddenly. And at that moment, my interest in mental strength wasn't just about teaching other people anymore. It was personal. I wanted to know, all
Mm.
right, from a personal standpoint, how do you get through really tough times? And when you're grieving, what actually works? And how do you make sure that when you go through hard times, you can still grow and be a hopeful, helpful individual to society? And I was glad that I did because 3 years to the day that my mom passed away, my 26-year-old husband died.
Mm.
And so I find myself a widow and I don't have my mom. And I'm supposed to be a therapist who helps other people deal with their problems, but I was heartbroken to say the least. And it took years to figure out how to rebuild my life and how to get through that. And it was really about what I didn't do. I really focused on, okay, Amy, as long as you don't have these certain bad habits, you can get through this. And a few years down the road, my father-in-law was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I just remember thinking, like, this isn't fair. I've
Mm.
just spent 10 years of my life grieving. I can't possibly grieve one more loss. I can't tolerate losing one more person. But like, I knew that thinking like that wasn't going to be helpful. And so I wrote myself a letter of what mentally strong people don't do. When I was done, I had a list of 13 things. And I thought if this helps me, maybe it would help somebody else. And so I put it on the internet, just thinking a few people would read it. But
Mhm.
50 million people read the list. One of those people happened to be a literary agent who said, you should write a book. But nobody knew the backstory of why I wrote it. They just assumed, oh, you're a therapist, you know these things. And it wasn't until the book came out a year later that I gave the backstory of actually I struggle with these things. And so it's been 10 years since I wrote the article, 9 years since the book came out, and here I am with book number 6 about to hit the shelves because I think so many people are interested in knowing how do you grow to be mentally strong. It's not something
Yeah.
we're taught in school, and nobody really teaches us how to build mental strength.
Yeah. Do you think the success of the book and the talk that, of course, stemmed out of your own story, that success is due to people feeling reflected in your own story and feeling, like I'm not finding a way out of grieving. They may have lost loved ones or a job or even something else that was of meaning to them. Do you think that's part of what your story and the things you've written about and your own TED talk resonates so much with people?
I think so. We don't really talk that much about how do you get through tough times. Like there's
Yeah.
this pressure to be like as happy as soon as possible, or that
Yeah.
that's a measure of success is if you come out relatively unscathed and you're doing great after you go through really tough times. But nobody talks about what to do and how do you get through those tough times and how do you cope with all of those difficult emotions. And I know I found that people just wanted to cheer me up when I was at my worst because that's our tendency is to try to make other people feel better, or my own tendency was to like distract myself or to do anything I could to go around those uncomfortable feelings, but you have to go through them. And I just really wanted to help people figure out how do you go through tough times and how do you deal with uncomfortable emotions in a way that's still healthy, because it's tempting to pick up lots of bad habits and do things that
Yeah.
aren't good for us and things that can backfire in the long run.
You said something in your TED talk. I mean, you said a lot of things that resonated a lot with me, and I'm going to be asking a lot with me. I'm sorry, and I'm going to be asking you about these things. But one of the things you said in the in the TED talk is that the secret to be mentally strong is not only to embrace good habits, but is to get rid of the bad habits, right? And that resonated with me because you said it before. When you're going through tough times, when there's adversity and difficulty in life, we tend to hear all people trying to cheer us up and trying to see the positive side of things. So we focus on the things that we have to do, the positive things that we have to do to get out of that sort of a mental situation. But little do we think about the other things that we continue to think about that we have to get rid of. So can you develop more on that idea?
Yeah, I was taught like when people come into your therapy office, build on their strengths. But it occurred to me pretty early on in my career, if I were to go to a physical trainer and they told me to run on the treadmill, lift weights, do these things, I'd be happy to do them. But what if they didn't tell me to just change my diet? Like
Yeah.
sometimes a few like simple tweaks make a huge difference. If I ate 2 jelly donuts for breakfast, that's probably 2 more hours on the treadmill. I'd rather not run on the treadmill for those 2 extra hours. And so I thought, how do I teach people if you just get rid of these one or two unhealthy habits, like all the good habits you already have will be so much more effective.
Yeah.
So I really want to focus on that. Like get rid of your counterproductive bad habits and the good stuff in your life will then start to work. It's like things click. Things start to make sense when you're like, "Oh yeah, I just got rid of that one thing I was doing." And then suddenly everything else starts to work. And I know for me, when I was in that really dark place after losing my loved ones, the last thing I wanted was like a long to do list. If I woke
Yeah.
up every day and said, here's 50 things you should do today, it would have been even more overwhelming. But if I woke up and said, hey, just don't do these couple of things and you'll be fine, like that felt doable to me.
Yeah, yeah, and I know we're going to talk about the 13 things mentally strong people don't do, and we're going to get there. I'm just preparing the audience to for you to share more about it. There was another thing that you said in the TED talk, which again really resonated with me, and it got me thinking for a long time. You said that there are three kinds of destructive beliefs that are robbing us from our mental strength. The three of them are the three destructive beliefs are: one, unhealthy beliefs about ourselves; two, unhealthy beliefs about others; and three, unhealthy beliefs about the world. I would love for you to, if you can, go into detail about each of these three kinds of destructive beliefs that are robbing us, like you said, from our mental strength.
Yeah, when we look at our bad habits, they all stem from those beliefs in the first place. So, the unhealthy beliefs about ourselves, like when we think, oh, I'm not good enough, I can't possibly succeed, I can't do all the things other people do, or I'm not fortunate enough in life compared to other people, it
Mhm.
leads to bad habits. Some of the 13 things mentally strong people don't do are directly related to that belief. Like you'll feel sorry for yourself. And it's really hard to get by in life when you have unhealthy beliefs about yourself. And the unhealthy beliefs about others is when you start to believe that other people are luckier, they're more fortunate,
Mhm.
that you can't trust anybody in the world, that other people will hold you back, that they'll constantly put you down. And when you believe other people are all bad, it leads to lots of other unhealthy habits. Like you give away your power because you think, I can't possibly make my life better. Other people are robbing me of joy or they're ruining my day. And then the third one is the unhealthy beliefs about the world is when we just think the world is a dark place, it's terrible, it's awful, horrible things are happening and everything's out of our control. Like why would you bother to develop good habits when you believe that and you start to then just think like there's nothing you can do, you can't possibly make a difference. Horrible things are going to happen to you constantly. And again, develop another whole list of unhealthy habits that often make those things come true. Our beliefs can quickly turn into self-fulfilling prophecies. If I
Mhm.
believe I can't trust anyone, well, then guess what? Then I don't actually put myself out there and make close relationships that are healthy. And then people do take advantage of me, or then
Yeah.
I end up spending time with people who aren't good for me. And it just reinforces that belief that people are horrible and awful. So it's important sometimes to take a step back and figure out like what kind of unhealthy beliefs do I hold on to? And we all have them and they all get activated at different times in life. Maybe when you get rejected for something, it brings up that belief of somehow you're not good enough. Or when you are in a relationship with somebody and it turns out to be not very healthy in the end, then it brings back that idea of, see, you can't trust anyone.
Yeah.
Once we know what our beliefs are, we can kind of start chipping away at them and remind ourselves there's exceptions to the rule. And
Yeah.
there are still actions we can take that are contrary to the way we believe, just as a way to prove to our brains that not everything is horrible or that you can't always distrust everybody in the world. There are plenty of good people, or that even when it comes to ourselves, yeah, there are times that maybe I do get rejected, but there's times I succeed too, or times that I exceed my own expectations. And there's plenty of times in life where we can just say, all right, this belief I have isn't true 100% of the time.
Yeah. How do you break the cycle, that positive feedback loop that keeps us in that thinking, right? Of believing that there's our beliefs about the world and other people and ourselves. And I ask you this because we are bombarded by by things or facts or ideas or perceptions that are trying to keep us in that loop, right? I mean, just look at the effects of social media on younger people, especially younger girls, right? How sickening it is for these younger girls and younger people in general, kids and teenagers, to look at others that are their same age and they look physically different, what they hold to be, the good aesthetics of life, or they seem to be more successful or smiling all the time. And you're like, why am I not that, right? So social media is just pushing that idea that there's got to be some, either they faked it or they did something that to get there so quickly, or we're not doing something to have gotten there where they are. So how do we break out of this cycle?
Good question. So it's really about noticing the link between the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we behave,
Mm.
and how they all reinforce each other. So if I think I'm not good enough, I feel bad about myself. I go to social media to try to see what's going to happen, and I don't get enough likes on my post, or I start scrolling through and I see other people are doing well. Then I start to think again, clearly I'm a horrible person. I feel worse. And then what do? I spend more time on social media.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's about changing the way you think. Maybe you come up with a list. Here are 10 reasons why I am better than I think I am sometimes. Or here are 10 exceptions to the rule, times when I've succeeded when I didn't think I could. And then to look at your behavior. Well, what can I change? Maybe I should spend less time on social media. And as an experiment, there's no guarantee this will make me feel better, but for 1 week, I'm going to only spend 10 minutes a day on social media, or I'm not going to use it after noon, or you just come up with some strategies and just test it. And if we really put ourselves out there and do these behavioral experiments, we can find like, hey, I have more control than I think I do. What if instead of getting on social media, I go and meet with a friend in person? And then you kind of
Yeah.
test it. Is my mood better or worse? Okay. And then test it again with something else. Instead of spending time on social media, I'm going to go for a walk by myself. Now, do I feel better or worse? And just putting ourselves out there and being open to the fact that maybe what we're doing isn't 100% the best for us all the time, but you don't know what is going to be better until you try something else.
Yeah. You know what? A couple of years ago, I deleted the Facebook and the Twitter apps from my phone. I felt, first of all, it was sickening to me to see all that was going on. And what I kept thinking to myself was like, the world can't be this horrible. I
Right.
mean, it's just like impossible, right? Because I go out and people still say good morning. Yeah, some people try to cut off when they're driving, but some people let me go. Most people stop in the red light. So it can't be like this. It's either the world, there's something that I'm not seeing, or social media is just amplifying all the negative and the bad. But I need to get away from this because this is making me sick. And it ended up being a positive thing for me to have gotten rid of those two apps, because now at least I think I regained a little bit of trust, and kindness towards the world.
That's a great example, because I think sometimes we think the whole world is like this, but maybe
Yeah,
it's just our world. And if my
yeah,
world revolves around, following people on social media that cause me to question myself, yes, then my whole world causes me to feel bad. But
yeah.
there's a giant world outside of this little bubble that I live in. And if I put myself out there and try new things, I can figure out what helps me feel better. And that's a great example to say that, yeah, maybe just all this time I'm spending on Twitter alone isn't good for my mental health. What am I going to do differently? And see what happens.
Yeah. How do you manage the influx of information telling you that if you are uh, if you think that there's something wrong with the world, but it may not be that bad, but you have this influx of information telling you, yes, it is that bad, it is horrible, you are right to be upset all the time and be mad at people. And that is happening these days now with all this political polarization, this validation of awful feelings, from people that think that they are being taken advantage of, or that others are stealing their opportunities. How do you manage that within yourself?
Yeah, I'm not completely against social media. I think we live in an age where, for the first time ever, like in the power of your pockets, you can have this little device where you can follow incredible mentors. You can
Yeah.
get free information about anything in the world, and it's just all about who you choose to follow and how you choose to use it and how you spend your time. So I think our digital devices have the power to help us build mental strength if we use them appropriately. So it might be about choosing different people to follow.
Yeah.
You can get like free mental health information on all of these apps if you want to, or you can get news about doom and gloom if that's what you
Yeah.
want to do too. So it's really up to you to say, who am I following? Never before could you join like a group of like-minded people. So you might find somebody who's struggling with some of the same things you are, but you could find support and like what's working for them. Whether you go to something like Reddit and you follow people who understand what you're going through, or you join a Facebook group, or you find somebody on Instagram who posts things that are inspirational and motivational, but just being really conscious of who we follow, why we follow them, and how we're getting the information and where all those information sources are coming from.
Yeah, there's this old adage that says that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most amount of time with, and that's been around for a long time, and it probably was created at a time when our relationships with others were like, firsthand, in-person kind of connections. But now that holds to be true too for this online world, right? I mean, if you are connected with people that are uplifting you and sending you empowering and inspiring messages about the world and about yourself, that is uplifting. But if you are surrounded by people that are telling you, I mean, either you suck, or that's why, whenever I see some of these gurus that are coming up now telling you like, oh, you're so lazy if you are not working 20 hours
Right.
crying a day, I'm like, man, that's horrible advice. I mean, you're
Right.
making people feel so bad about themselves
Mm.
with something that probably you're not even doing yourself, right? So I love that idea now of truly surrounding yourself with people that are uplifting you. Doesn't mean that they are hiding reality or just sending positive messages, like you said before. They are just uplifting you.
Correct. And when they've done research on this, like 80% of the mental health information on TikTok is inaccurate.
Yeah,
But so you have to do your research of who you're
yeah,
following, why you're following them, and where they're getting their information from. And just
yeah.
because something sounds motivational or it rhymes doesn't mean it's good advice.
I love the rhyme thing.
Yeah.
Amy, let me ask you this: what's the difference between being mentally healthy and being mentally strong? And then from here, we're going to go to the 13 things mentally strong people don't do.
Well, as a therapist, I'll have people come into my office and say like, "Oh, I wish I could be mentally strong, but I have depression," or "I wish I could build mental strength, but I have anxiety." But to be clear, some of the strongest people I've ever met were battling mental health issues, and it's similar to if you wanted to go to the gym and become physically strong, that could really improve your physical health, but it doesn't guarantee that you would never get a physical health problem. You might
Yeah,
still get high cholesterol, or you might still develop a problem with your knee. And it doesn't mean that you are lacking in physical strength. It just means you have a health condition. Mental health
yeah,
is the same, that there are a lot of factors we can't control: your personality, your genetics, the circumstances that you've been through in life. And so it's not a sign of weakness if you are struggling with a mental health issue,
mm,
but we all have the power to build mental strength. It's about what
yeah,
we choose to do every day. If you choose to do things that help you grow stronger, you can do that regardless of what kind of mental health condition you're battling.
yeah. And now I would love for you to, I don't know if you want to give them all away, the 13 things mentally strong people don't do. Because I would love for the people that are tuning in right now and watching this replays to go and check out the book and get one of your 6 books. But for now, maybe Amy, if you can share any of the perhaps of the most powerful sort of things that mentally strong people don't do, or the most significant ones, and I'm sure all of them are.
Sure. The one that people talk about the most is that mentally strong people don't give away their power.
Mm.
And this one is about saying, I'm in control of how I think, feel, and behave. But we all have times when we blame somebody else for like
Yeah,
ruining our day, stealing our time, wasting our time, or that they are making us do something, making us feel bad about ourselves. But the truth is, nobody can do any of that. Your mother-in-law can't make you feel bad about yourself. Your boss can't make you work late. Like, yeah, there might be consequences if you didn't work late, but they can't force you to do it. So it's just about recognizing, all right, this is up to me. I get to choose who I spend my time with, how I spend my time, what I'm going to do from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed, how well I take care of myself. And I mean, even after all these years, I still find myself saying things sometimes like, oh, I have to go to the grocery store. Well, I don't have to. Yeah, might be consequences. Like I don't have the ingredients I wanted to make something, but I don't have to. And just changing my language is huge. And just
yeah,
recognizing like, all right, it's up to me. And if I think that somebody else is stealing something from me or that they're making me do something, it's probably a sign I need a better boundary in my life. And
mhm,
it's up to me to set
mhm.
those boundaries and to be more cautious of who I'm allowing into my life or how I'm allowing other people to treat me. So that's the
That's
biggest one
tough.
that people often want to bring up is don't give
Yeah,
away your power. Another one is not focusing on things that you can't control. there's so many things we can't control, whether it's the economy or the political environment or how other people behave. So often we put our focus on wishing people did things differently or even trying to manipulate other people into acting the way that we want them to act. But the truth is, you can't control other people. It's up to them. And when you let go of the things you can't control, you then have so much more energy and time to just focus on what you can control. And you can always control your attitude, your behavior, how you think, how you feel. So it's about saying, like, yeah, I'm going to take control over this little thing that I do have control over, and
Mm.
just come to that place of acceptance that there's so much I don't have any control over. That's tough to do, but it's
Yeah.
powerful when you do it.
Yeah. No, it is tough. And I was thinking about me having sort of experienced firsthand sort of these two things that you just mentioned, these two things that mentally strong people don't do. When I was in corporate America before becoming, the solopreneur, the entrepreneur that I am now, but with the community that I have. But back then, I would listen to people, I would hear people say things like, um, if the company is not spending time in me, in my learning and my development, then I'm not gonna do it, right? I'm not going to be investing of my own money. And what I kept thinking was like, whoa, that's a pretty unfortunate thing to say, because the company may invest a little bit of money in you, but at the end of the day, this is for you. You're giving away part of the power. You're just you're not investing in your own employability, your own future, and that's a very unfortunate thing to do and to even think about. So that was like a first-hand experience of in the corporate world of me witnessing people just giving away part of the power.
And I'm hearing so much about that too from people who are not happy with their job. So they're
Yeah.
talking about quiet quitting or rage applying and all of these things that are going around where people are just really angry at their employer. But it's important to then say, like, how do I take charge? Like, who do I
Yeah.
want to be? And what do I want my character to be like? And how do I want to invest in myself, even if my employer is not going to do that?
Yeah. Well, one thing that actually also happened to me was I had a job that I could not. I felt miserable in that job, and I didn't have the privilege to just leave. Right. I needed to stay there for many reasons, and there was this time when I said to myself, "All right, I can't leave, and I am miserable. Those are two truths."
Yep.
So I'm gonna have to decide what I do with the time that I'm spending in this office, because I feel and I know that I'm using only 10% of my talents in what I am actually doing. So I gotta decide what I want to do with the other 90%. Am I gonna be dumb scrolling on social media all day just to kill time, or am I gonna be investing that time in doing something else? And actually, that's how Hacking HR, this community, came to exist, because I said to myself, I want to do something that is cool for me and for others, and I have the time and I can't leave this job for now, but I am miserable. So I want to create value. And I created this community, and now it's my full-time job, right? But it's that decision that you're talking about, Amy. It's just deciding, you know what, I have the power and these are the things that I can control. It's the little sliver of things that I can actually control, and I'm going to make the most out of it. And that is such a sobering realization, I guess.
I like that you said that because so many people will say, well, if you don't like your job, just quit. Well,
Yeah.
it's not always that easy. There are
Yeah.
often so
No.
many factors that go into it that somebody can't just walk away from a job that they don't like. And so if you feel like, all right, I'm going to stay, it's just important to recognize, well, I'm choosing to stay. And
Yeah.
here's what I'm going to choose to do while I'm here to make the
Yeah.
very best of this situation that I'm in. And there's a huge difference because I find when people will say, well, I can't stand this anymore. Well, the truth is you
Yeah.
can stand it. Stand it for one more day than you think you can, just if
Yeah.
not anything else than to train your brain like, all right, I can hack a bad situation, but here's how I'm going to do it. Here's how I'm going to tolerate it. I'm going to find these little ways to perhaps make my day a little
Mhm.
bit better. And when you start to do that, you're like, oh yeah, I have some control over this. And
Yeah.
they've looked at so many examples of people who maybe when they feel like they have like zero control in life. And one of my, I think, favorite and most startling examples is when they looked at kids who have to undergo cancer treatment. And a lot of the treatments they undergo are really painful. They don't
Yeah.
understand why they're being done to them, and it just doesn't make any sense to them why these adults are doing it to them. But they started teaching these kids breathing exercises.
Mm.
Once they did that, the kids rated their pain levels as a lot lower, and their treatments were so much less scary for them because they could control how they breathed. They
Yeah.
couldn't control all of the things that were happening to them, but if they knew, all right, I'm just going to focus on how I breathe, it made it better. So I guarantee there's always something we can control, even if it's just how you're breathing in the moment. But to
Yeah.
know, all right, there's something I can control. And if I choose to focus on that, my life can get a lot better.
Yeah, and that is truly empowering, to be honest. To think that you won't be able to change your boss. I mean, if your boss sucks, he or she is gonna suck today, tomorrow, and when you leave, he or she will continue to suck. And if your culture, your corporate culture is awful, it will continue to be awful tomorrow, today, because those are things that are completely out of your influence and control. But to me, what's empowering is what you're saying, right? There's a piece of the everything that I can actually do something about, that I can control. Even if that is, for example, me just going to work and adding a little bit of extra spice to my daily work, right? Even if
Right.
my boss doesn't know about it, something that I can actually do to make my days better. And that to me is truly empowering. And if I fear that so many people give away that power, relinquish that control and that power that they actually have to act on that little space that they have to do something about their days, their jobs, and whatever it is.
And I find a lot of people, if they don't like their job, what do they do when they get home at the end of the day? They complain about their job, right? To their
Yeah.
partner or to whoever will listen.
Yeah.
Well, then your 8-hour day that you don't like is now taking up 10 hours of your day because you
Yeah.
spend 2 hours complaining about it. And you think
Yeah.
the last thing you want to do is give that job you don't like or that boss who's mean to you more of your time and energy.
Yeah.
So talk about the one good thing that happened today and then try to move on and talk about more positive things. Otherwise, it becomes all consuming and it can really take over your whole life.
Yeah, what the way I think about that is when I find myself, and I'm trying to become much more aware of that right now. But when I find myself complaining about something in my mind, what I think about, not always immediately, but pretty much very close to the beginning of what I started complaining in my mind about something is, I'm not gonna give this thing a space in my head. Why am I doing this? Like
Yes.
I do run a lot. So I go to the forest, I don't listen to music. So when I'm running and I complain about something in my head, I stopped, and what I think about is like, just look around, man. I mean, look where you are. You are in the freaking of the, in the middle of the freaking forest. Look at this beauty. Why the hell are you complaining about stuff? Just stop it. Right. And at least that realization, not always do I stop complaining, but at least I am getting to that place of awareness, right? That this is consuming me, and it's damaging my running, is harming my body, my mind. And that awareness, again, it's to me, is empowering.
It really is, and then that voice in our head all day long, if it's just
Yeah.
pointing out all of the bad in the world, like, you're gonna feel bad, and then that
Yeah.
affects your behavior, so sometimes you have to go after the good, like, "All right, what's one good thing I had today?" Maybe it was a sandwich you ate for lunch wasn't so bad. If that's the one good thing you can think of, like, go for it, but even just proactively asking yourself, like, "What was the best part of my day? What are
Yeah.
3 good things that happened? What are 3 things I did today to put some good out into the world?" And it might be you held
Yeah.
the door from somebody, or you smiled at somebody, or you just said thank you to somebody. Those
Yeah.
little things, once we start to notice them, makes a huge shift in how we feel. And uh, it's contagious too. When we're kind
Yeah.
to other people, they spread kindness. And there's so many
Yeah.
things we can do to put goodness and kindness out into the world. And that makes us feel good too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like before you, like about a couple of hours ago, I was interviewing somebody. We were talking about his book, The 5 Side Effects of Kindness. And he was saying exactly the same things that you're saying, right? I mean, even those things that we can hold on, which are our acts of kindness, and how contagious that is. And we end up spreading love. So, and spreading kindness. Amy, can you tell us a couple of more mentally things that mentally strong people don't do? You mentioned not they don't relinquish their power. They don't focus on what they can't control. Couple more things so that people walk away with not only inspiration, but a little bit of an action plan of things that they can and should be thinking about.
So one is not shying away from change. So
Mm,
many people in my therapy office who will say like, well, I just don't want to make things worse. So they kind of
mm.
stay stuck in it, whether it's a bad relationship or a job that they don't love, or just an unhealthy situation because they think, yeah, I could do something different, but I might make things worse. So then they stay stuck. There's
Mm,
tons of research when they looked at, people's happiness level when they make a change. I'm like, hands down, when people make a change, whether it's they move to a new city, they get a new job, they start a different relationship if they're unhappy in the current one, or they make some changes to improve that relationship, people are hands down happier people. And it gives us
yeah.
more confidence in ourselves when we think, I can handle change. So sometimes it's just about acknowledging, like, what am I afraid of and how do I
Mm,
feel right now? Well, I'm anxious, or I didn't want to be sad, so I'm going to stay stuck. But then, like, the long-term side effect of staying stuck is you probably aren't going to be happy either.
mm,
So for some people, it's about writing a list, the pros and cons of making change, but also then take the pros and cons of not making the change. And sometimes
yeah.
you can talk yourself into doing something different when you are reminded by not doing anything differently. I'm making a choice here too. And so often we think, well, I'll do that later. Like I'll worry about that next month or when things in life slow down. Well, things never slow down. So there's
Never
never like
slow
a
down.
right. There's never a great time to then be
No.
like, okay, I'm going to change my life this week
Now,
because this
yeah,
week is
this week.
slow. It doesn't work that way. So just knowing, yeah. And then along the same lines is not being afraid to take a calculated risk. We tend
Mm,
to think that fear and risk are related. So if it feels scary, it must be risky. There's absolutely no evidence that that's true, that we tend to often be afraid of the wrong things. Like if I said to you, I'm going to get you an Uber and you're going to go 10 miles down the road with a complete stranger to give a speech to 10,000 people. If you're like most people, you'd say, well, giving the speech sounds scary, but getting in the Uber sounds fine. Well, really, like what's actually riskier? Probably getting in a car in general is riskier than giving a speech. You're not going to
yeah.
fall off the stage. Like nothing terrible is going to happen more than likely, but there is a chance you could get in a car accident. But because most of us get in a car on a regular basis, we're not scared of it. And that's what happens when it comes to risk. When something feels
Mm,
scary, we think, I better not do it. And we step away from it, even when those are the opportunities that have the power to make our lives so much better. And then sometimes things that are risky, we just get used to and we forget that there's any risk involved at all. And then we don't look at the potential downsides. And then our emotions affect all of that too. Like when you're really excited about something, you forget there's a downside. That's why people fall
yeah.
prey to get rich quick schemes, even when they're really smart, because they
Yeah.
get so excited that they forget about the downside. But on the other side, when we're nervous about something, and we're anxious, we only focus on the potential downside and we forget to look at the upside. So it's important to take a look at your emotions and how that's affecting your decision making too.
Yeah, and I'm sure this message about taking calculated risks is is very inspiring for people who are right now rethinking their careers, the way they work. After the pandemic, so many people came to the realization, I don't want to continue working in this way, right? I mean, there are things that matter so much more than just the daily grind and hustling, and I want something more out of life. And that's what you find so many people moving from bigger cities to smaller rural towns like my own little town here in Arizona, right, where they wanted to have a better quality of life, more peace, more being outdoors. And it's hard just to make that decision, right? I mean, it's for some people it is like all they've seen is living in a city, one kind of job, and making that decision to move on to something that is completely different. Though calculating the risk is can be scary, but some people are making that decision right now.
Right? Yeah, you're talking to somebody that moved onto a sailboat 7 years
Yeah.
ago and hasn't and
You were in San Francisco before?
I was in Maine before
In Maine, okay.
and then moved to the Florida Keys and haven't regretted it at all. I love it here, but we forget too that a lot of our decisions are fixable. So if you were to move to the other side of the country and you hated it, like you can probably move back. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to cost you some money and it might cost you some time, but a lot of the things we do aren't permanent. Or if you quit your job, you might not be able to go back to the exact same position you were in before, but I bet you could find another job if being an entrepreneur doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
But in our heads, we always think like it's in either or, like I either have to
Yeah.
do this or not. And we forget, no, most things in life, if you don't like it, you can probably then take a step back and find something else to do.
Yeah, one of my good friends, she had this top job, top role in a big company, and she said to me, I wanted to take a sabbatical year, just traveling around the world, and the company didn't allow that to happen, so I just had to quit. I sold all my things, my house, my everything. I traveled around the world for a couple of years, and when I came back, not only did the company reach out to me to give me my job back, they said that because of all the things that I've learned from all different cultures, they offered me a higher position with more pay and much better than what she had before. So it was scary for her. She didn't even expect this thing to happen to her when she returned to the US, and it happened. So for her at least, it ended up being a very rewarding, risky decision in the front end. So it was fantastic for her.
I love that story because sometimes you just don't know, and things can often be better than we even expected, right? And
Yeah.
when I wrote an article, I didn't expect that I would then be able to come an author, and all these years later, I'd still be talking about mental strength. But sometimes things can be way better than we anticipate, but you never know until you put yourself out there and you start to take some calculated risks.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this question as we get ready to wrap up our chat, and I am already taking more time than I scheduled with you, so I'm hoping that that's okay. Just a couple of more minutes, and I will let you go. But this question: how do we let go of the things that are unhealthy or that are destroying, if I can use that word, that are breaking our mental strength? How do we let go of behaviors, habits, things that we think about, people that we are connected with that are also unhealthy for us? How do we let all of that go?
I think anytime we do something and it's not serving us well in the long run, we just have to recognize what the consequences are. Like there's a reason that we're doing it, whether we're talking about somebody who reaches for alcohol or somebody who gets in an unhealthy relationship after unhealthy relationship. Like there's no doubt it's serving you well in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. But sometimes we forget to look at the downside of it. So I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of telling people, like, first of all, self awareness, recognizing what it is that you're doing, and then come up with a list of the 10 reasons why you shouldn't do that thing.
Mhm.
And and then read over that list every day if you have to, or when you're tempted to do that thing, read that list. And sometimes you can change your mindset just by saying, all right, I'm not going to do that. And then you might have to replace it with something else. So even if we said, all right, if somebody says, I'm not going to spend so much time on social media. Well, what are you going to do with your time instead? Are
Yeah.
you going to, read a book? Are you going to talk to people? Are you going to go exercise? Whatever it is, you need a replacement for those things. And then to figure out how do you still get your needs met. If scrolling through social media helps you deal with boredom, well, how are you going to deal with boredom now? Maybe you
Yeah.
need some strategies to just cope, but maybe you need to read a book for a while too. So I would say just make a list of all of the reasons why that thing isn't serving you and then find a healthier substitute for it.
Yeah, love that. Amy, thank you so much for spending this time with me and sharing all of these amazing insights with me, of course, and with our Hacking HR community. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And please just check out the rest of the conversations that we have. Stay tuned for the many more conversations that we have lined up here as part of this Hacking HR live chat series. So, Amy, once again, thank you so much. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And if not staying put, sailing somewhere awesome and warm and beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. See you all soon. Thank you.